The court case to shut down Uber in Toronto is facing a bumpy start. The mobile app connects passengers with drivers for hire, some of whom don't have a taxi or limo license. Now, some cab drivers say that's not fair. And as Natalie Collada tells us, hundreds of them took to the streets today to make sure that point was heard.
Hundreds of taxi drivers sounded their displeasure today with Uber blocking traffic and clogging the downtown core to protest the ride-sharing service.
To operate the city, they don't pay a tax, they don't do anything, but we have to pay a tax for the licensing, for everything.
We don't need some outside foreign company to come and make their own rules here. This is not how Canada works.
Uber does not pay the same fees to operate in the city or insurance costs as traditional taxi services. The company applied for a taxi brokerage license about a month ago, but in court today, city lawyers began arguments to shut down the app in Toronto, telling the judge they are breaking the law. They are effectively taxis. When it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, you should call it a duck. The company doesn't own a fleet of vehicles. Instead, it connects customers to drivers through an app.
People are broke in the city, so they want to use the cheapest, quickest option, and sometimes Uber is just that much more available.
There should be room for innovation. There should be room for choice.
Commenting on the protest today, an Uber spokesperson told CBC, rather than blocking roads and preventing people from getting where they need to be, we are focused on meeting the needs of Toronto riders and drivers who are all too often left out of the debate.
I think it's
Toronto's mayor has repeatedly opposed the injunction, though John Tory says Uber shouldn't be allowed to flout the city's rules for taxis. The judge said today the rules are up to the city. With the internet evolving, you had the opportunity to address the issue and change the bylaw. Is it my job to do your job? Now, Uber also says in a statement it remains committed to working with the city on a regulatory framework for a ride-sharing program. As for how this will all end up, that is still unclear. Court continues tomorrow. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, the coming days could change how you catch a cab in our city. Uber's future in Toronto is in question, of course, as a murky legal battle began today. Christina Howron with why even the judge is questioning whether this is a case for the courtroom or the council chambers.
There's a lot of gray area right now around Uber. No one seems to know, how they have insurance, how they're able to operate a commercial business when they use private cars. So there are a lot of safety concerns.
But all that may not matter as Justice Sean Dunphy decides Uber's fate in Toronto. The city has applied for a permanent injunction against Uber's operations. The issue isn't if Uber's drivers are breaking the city's bylaws by operating unlicensed cabs. It's whether or not Uber Canada is a brokerage. According to the City of Toronto's taxi bylaw, a taxi cab broker is any person who accepts requests in any manner for taxi cabs used for hire. The city argues that by setting fares and by accepting requests for rides from passengers, Uber is doing just that. But Uber argues that it doesn't dispatch vehicles and the driver accepts or rejects the ride through an app.
The bylaws are clear. A brokerage is somebody that dispatches orders, and that's what Uber is doing. If you compare them to any other brokerage in the City of Toronto, such as Beck Taxi Co-op, they all have similar apps now.
Judge Dunphy repeatedly questioned the city's definition of Uber's work. So far, you're describing something a lot like a baggage claims office or a ticket seller, not an airline. He also pointed out that the city has the jurisdiction and ability to change the bylaw, but hasn't. My question is whether you have exercised that jurisdiction. Is it my job to fill in the gaps in the legislation? It's this legislation that Uber claims is unconstitutional, saying it infringes on the company's freedom of expression. Uber has essentially been banned in Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, and France. But what happens here over the next 3 days will set the stage for ride-sharing programs across Canada. In downtown Toronto, Christina Howron, City News.
There's more to this story.
If somebody's trying to steal your business, you will do anything and everything to protect you.
Taking their fight to the streets. I'm Adrian Gobriel outside City Hall. How taxi drivers made their battle with Uber personal today.
Stop using UberX. This is City of Toronto. This is not a jungle.
Well, the clash between Toronto cabbies and Uber now in the courtroom. A hearing is underway into whether the ride-sharing service should be allowed to operate or should it be banned. Traditional taxi companies say Uber is acting as a cab brokerage and unfairly operating outside city bylaws.
We want more innovation and more technology. The easier it is for customers to get into licensed taxis, we will support 100%. However, the bylaws are clear. A brokerage is somebody that dispatches orders, and that's what Uber is doing. If you compare them to any other brokerage in the city of Toronto, such as Beck Taxi, Co-op, they all have similar apps now.
And the legal battle spilling out into the streets. Taxi drivers staging a massive protest to show how ride-sharing has left them Uber upset. Adrian Gabriel, with the city's cab drivers, voiced their displeasure by putting the brakes on Toronto traffic.
Stop using UberX. This is City of Toronto. This is not a jungle.
They took over downtown by the hundreds, honking their horns from Queens Quay to Queen's Park to City Hall. Taxi drivers protesting what they claim is an unlevel playing field when it comes to UberX, the discount service which links up passengers with everyday motorists who haven't been paying those hefty city-mandated registration and licensing fees.
There is a big battle on the road.
He did it like 3-4 times.
We obtained this exclusive dash cam video from an UberX driver who claims he was cut off by the same Beck Taxi not once but twice Saturday night, all because he's an UberX driver. Beck Taxi tells City News they're investigating the claim.
If somebody's trying to steal your business, you will do anything and everything to protect your business, and maybe that's the case. The driver has done it to protect his business.
You too.
The taxi wars on Toronto's streets have been brewing ever since Uber moved to the city about 3.5 years ago. And taxis say today's protest shows they've hit their boiling point.
If it continues this way, then probably I have to end up park my car, go and look for something else to do.
Coveted city taxi plates cost $1,250 but are resold for approximately $250,000. Annual licensing fees are $350. Commercial taxi insurance per vehicle for 2 drivers, approximately $9,000 a year. A cab dispatch fee, another $6,000 a year. That's not including things like biennial CPR training and vehicle maintenance every 6 months.
My insurance is about $230 per month. It's a win-win for me.
Jen Thompson has been a part-time UberX driver for a month. She takes home 80% from each fare, which she says works out to about $300 to $400, working just 10 hours a week.
Would you be in favor of some form of regulation with the city, some sort of licensing fee with the city as an UberX driver?
I would be okay with that as long as it doesn't cost up to $11,000 a year.
But for licensed city taxi drivers, their message is clear.
Stop the UberX. That's what I want to say. Stop the UberX.
In response to today's protest and court hearing, Uber sent out this notice to its customers today titled "Defend Your Right to Ride in TO." They're also calling on all their clients to raise their voices using a hashtag. On Edward Street, Adrian Gabriel, City News.
Now, still on the roads, a honking big protest today outside of City Hall. An estimated 500 taxis blaring their horns against the ride booking service called Uber. They say Uber can offer lower prices and make higher profits because it doesn't pay licensing fees or high insurance rates. Cabbies say that is simply not fair.
When you don't have a commercial insurance, we have commercial insurance. Most of the cars in the city, they're all brand new cars. I don't see the reason why we cannot, they cannot shut down the UberX because they're taking all the business, and that is not right at all.
As it happens, the City of Toronto is currently in court seeking a permanent injunction to shut down Uber services. But the mayor says new technologies like Uber are here to stay, and the city must find a compromise that works for both sides.